How you doing, YouTube? Matt Massa Beer Reviews back with some old beer time in the form of Draai Laag Brewing, now Strange Roots Brewing. This is Port of Sour. It's a port barrel aged sour coming in at 8.2%. No story time on here. Draai Laag, if you've watched my channel since inception, you know I'm a big fan of what they've done. And several years ago, they actually switched and changed their name from Draai Laag to Strange Roots. I actually did a podcast about that name change with Dennis from Draai Laag, so you can go check out the podcast of that if you want over at the old Beer Massif. But this comes not from my cellar; it comes from my buddy Dan, aka Disco Pie, on the old comment sections down there. He's from Pittsburgh. He digs the channel. He wanted to send off a bunch of beer. A lot of it was stuff from his cellar, and Pittsburgh-based stuff. And I'm tickle pick. I'm not wearing my Draai Laag shirt. I kind of wanted to do that. You know, be that guy that wears the concert shirt to the concert. So we'll see what's what. Now, I have no idea what kind of beer this is. This is the barrel aged sour. I remember this beer. I don't know if I've had it before, but we're talking about a port barrel. Give it an aggressive pour because you're not going to get much of a head out of that. Label-wise, I really like all of Strange Roots labels. And by that I mean I like Draai Laag 1, Draai Laag 2, and Strange Roots labels. The original Draai Laag labels were ghetto. Like ghetto. In the most perfect way possible because they're a very heavily Belgian influenced brewery. And, you know, kind of the best Belgian labels are kind of ghetto labels. So it kind of made sense in my brain. When they moved to this aesthetic, I liked it. Not equally, but different. You know, it's a cleaner, more concise kind of branding. And then when they moved to Strange Roots, they brought a little bit more kind of graphic, like almost comic book kind of graphic stylization to some of their labels. All of them I kind of dig. So what does that look like? Sun tea. Looks like sun tea. Yeah, a little bit of a head on there, nothing too crazy. Looks all the parts of like a nice iced tea. It's good nose. I mean, you're getting a slightly musty, rather aggressively tart beer, but you're also getting a big whiff of that port. It's not hot, it's not big, it's not like very fusel kind of like bigness, but you're definitely getting that port in there. I'm not sure what kind of port they used, but it's ever present in there. So you get that wine port, the port wine section of the show there, definitely coming to a head. But that beer itself with its big kind of tartness that I assume is going to come with a decent level of acidity. We might even get into like apple cider vinegar territory with this beer. It's definitely present on the nose too. And that's pretty much it. It really is that soft, funky tart, not soft, funky, rather sharp, funky tart sourness from the beer itself and that big port characteristic. But they're both equally showing up here. That's not like one's out gunning the other. So let's just dive in. Cheers. Okay. Let's wait for it. Almost no acidity on this beer. There is acidity to it. Not all that perceptible because my body's going, hey, heartburn, how you doing? No, I'm not going to get it, but it's definitely there. The amount of oak in this beer is surprisingly large. It's probably might be the biggest volume in this beer. Yeah, very dry. Not a ton of vanilla or anything. There's a real big, huge oak tannin here. That port wine shows its head. It's not that big. The funky tartness of the beer shows its head. Not that big. I think this is past its prime. Its mouth feels a little bit thin. I think that's a process of oxidation. There's a little bit of like a latex Band-Aid-y thing going on in here. So, not necessarily in a negative sense, but it's kind of dipping into that a little bit, which isn't inhibiting the beer from being enjoyable, but it's definitely present here. It might have been even present at the get, but it probably was hidden underneath its beer if it was a little bit bigger when it was originally released. It's okay. And here's the thing. The name of this beer, or the description of this beer on here, it says a port barrel aged sour. This beer is exactly what that says. It's a port barrel aged sour. But that's all there is to it. And I don't, I'm not meaning to knock it too bad because it's not a negative beer. It didn't turn into like horrible sour. That little bit latex Band-Aid phenolic isn't like, it's barely there. So it's more me just picking out the stuff that I'm not enjoying in the beer. but it just like outside of that oak, which is the biggest portion of show of the beer completely across it, it is a sour in the most generic sense of the word. And it is port barrel aged in the most generic sense of the word. I couldn't sit here and tell you what kind of port it is, whether it's sherry or tawny or something like that. I don't know. I just get these kind of fortified wine kind of characteristics off of it. And then I get a sour golden ale with little to no kind of personality. And the only thing that really kind of separates itself from all of that is that big oak addition, that big oak dryness on it, which I actually quite enjoy. But I just want a little bit more volume and personality from the beer itself. To show up and just show me something. And while it's not doing that, it doesn't make it a bad beer by any stretch of imagination. It makes it just a little bit of a boring beer. Something I rarely have had from Draai Laag, so that's kind of weird. Because most of their beers, if they're anything, they are not boring. But I'm assuming time has done its duty on this. And it kind of goes towards my kind of personal mantra. It's a lot of other people's mantras, so it's not just me. Is that, these funky sour port barrel aged, this, that, and the other thing, it might not be the best long haul agers in the world. They can be, but the more moving parts you have in a beer, the more that can, I don't want to use the word so go sideways, because this beer isn't sideways, just kind of lose its luster. So I'm thinking this beer, coming out in 2017, maybe 18, 19, it's probably right where it's peaking. A couple years later, just kind of, a ghost of itself. Again, not in a negative way, just a little bit lacking the volume or the personality for me to go gaga over it. So let's talk about it. It's one of the better sour beers. One of the better aged sour beers. I almost have to default it. Let's just go sour beers. One of the better sour beers I've had as of late now. I strictly place that on time with this beer because, like I said, I'm a big fan of Draai Laag / Straight Roots, and this one's just a little bit meh. Still a fine beer, nothing negative about it, just no volume. Value and availability, no idea. Obviously, not going to be able to pick this up off a shelf. Actually, that's not wrong. That's not correct. You could probably pick this up off a shelf. To be honest with you, I see Draai Laag bottles randomly turning it up, and they probably changed their name in 2017 or 18. So if I'm still seeing them, then you can have these bottles. I'm not quite sure what they go for. I'm guessing this when Dan bought this, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably paid, I'm guessing, $8 a bottle for this. And leave you with it if you like what we like this. If you like aged beer, let's put it that way, because that's the thing about this is that. Even though the beer didn't come off as the best beer I've ever had or the best aged beer I've ever had, this is the experiment. This is the life experiment of aging beer. And when you have a beer that's past its prime and not fantastic, I think there's still something to be taken from that, at least in an experience. And that's why it's not like I'm like angry I'm drinking this beer. I'm actually liking it. Even though it's not great, it just gives me a little bit more reference for what age can do with beer to put in the old catalog up here. And for that, I enjoy it. And for that, I'm very much appreciative that you set it off, Dan. So there you go. Reviewing the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Down there if you want to talk about it. Massive Beers if you want to check me out doing the social media stuff. Beer Massif if you want to check me out doing the whole podcasting thing. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of Draai Laag or Strange Roots right now. Burps. Hope to see you next time. Cheers.